We're just wanting her to come home. I don't want to think like that she isn't coming home, but I'm not going to stop looking for you, and I just hope that you're okay wherever you're at.
That was Kiana Wilkerson, one of 6 children of Dawnita Wilkerson. Kiana is wondering where her mother is and has been wondering that since Father's Day of this year. It's time to turn on the searchlight for Dawnita Wilkerson. Welcome back to Brainscratch Searchlight. I'm John Lorden. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Before we get into today's case, I just want to give you guys a little backstory about how this case came to me. The Aware Foundation, who I spoke about 2 weeks ago on the Billy Darwin case, helped us by making a poster and then asked, hey, John, there's a case that we would like to see more exposure raised to. Can you help us out? So for the Aware Foundation, here we are covering the case of Dawnita Wilkerson, but also for her multiple family members that are missing her, wondering where she is, not knowing, is she safe? Has something very bad happened? Let's get into the details and see what we can learn with today's case, starting at NamUs. Thankfully, we already have a profile for Dawnita Wilkerson, a Black African-American female, date of last contact June 21st, 2020, missing from Evansville, Indiana at the age of 44. 5 foot, between 5'1" and 5'4", weighing between 130 to 150 pounds. For circumstances, we don't get a ton. Officers were dispatched to a missing person report. Upon arrival, the reporting party informed officers that her mother had been missing for 2 days. Sounds to me like law enforcement probably created this record. We're going to get some different details as we're going through the different news stories that might give us a little more insight, but this is one of those cases where we don't have a ton of great detail about, in particular, about the last sighting, even to the point of here for physical description, we've got black hair, brown eyes, we've got some tattoos on her lower back, a heart, upper right shoulder, praying hands, and it says Timmy. Upper left shoulder, a cross, but for clothing and accessories, we've got nothing. And what's interesting is I am actually seeing descriptions for clothing and accessories on the missing posters, but those are differing a little bit. So we'll cover those also as we go through all this. No transportation noted in terms of the missing persons profile. Which is one of those big questions with this case. Ultimately, we find that she walks away from a family member's home saying, I'll be right back, and she never comes back. We don't know method of transportation from there forward. I can't even answer the question of, did she have her own car? I could assume that she likely had her own car. Was that left at her family member's home? Was that left somewhere else? We have a lot of questions, not a lot of answers with this case, but as always, we're going to cover what the media has covered here on the first episode. Family of Dawnita, if you want to reach out to me, you can email john@lordenarts.com. You can let me know additional details. We can release those details in follow-up episodes. Here at the NamUs profile, no pictures of the tattoos, literally just 2 pictures of her face. And then for contact information, of course, they've got the Evansville Police Department with Detective Dexter Wolf leading the case and an agency case number. I'll have the contact information that you need and the case number in the description box below. But let's try to get some better detail about this. So here is the poster from the Aware Foundation. And once again, thank you guys so much for being such a caring organization, willing to help other cases, and then willing to ask for help when you need help as well. I really appreciate the relationships that I've been able to develop with a lot of these organizations, and the Aware Foundation, certainly one of those. So here's the poster they put together for Dawnita Wilkerson. We're seeing basically the same level of information, age 44. They are noting her hair is curly at the time that she goes missing. You can see in some of these images, it looks like it's been straightened. 5'3", about 145 pounds. 44-year-old mother of 6 went missing on June 21st, 2020. Her family fears she is in danger. Dawnita was staying at her brother's house in Evansville, Indiana. On June 21st, she left the house saying she would be right back. Hasn't been seen or heard from since. They mention the same tattoos, no additional detail there, but they also note Dawnita has several medical conditions that require medication that she's without. So obviously another very big cause for concern there. In terms of clothing description, I found a different poster here. I don't know if Addie Bryant actually created this poster, but I have seen that she's been helping this case quite a bit on the Facebook front. But here we have a clothing description: seen wearing red t-shirt, blue jean shorts, and sandals. Now we're going to see there's some other information that doesn't line up with that. I don't know which is more accurate. Being on Father's Day, being that she was at a family member's house, I would like to think that we've got a decent description here in terms of the clothing, but I can tell you we are going to see a variation in one of the news stories. So let's start covering some of these stories and seeing what we can learn. Dawnita L. Wilkerson, 44, was reported missing after last being seen in the Evansville area on June 21st. Now she may be in the Carbondale area, and I'm seeing a couple references to that, but not seeing any description of why she might be in Carbondale in particular. Last known to be wearing black leggings, and that is all that we get here. Obviously, that doesn't line up very strongly with the previous description. I don't know if what might be happening is different family members are talking about the last time that they saw her and what she was wearing at that point. It would be nice to have some clarification about that, especially if there's someone that is like, I was at the house when she walked out, and I know that she was wearing this. Obviously, that would be much stronger information to lean on, but we're not getting solid info on where this information is actually coming from. Let's continue with an article from tristatehomepage.com. A family begging for answers refuses to give up the search for their missing loved one. They haven't heard from Dawnita Wilkerson since Father's Day. One of the other things that just is tickling in my brain about this is I know some family dynamics can get particularly tough around holidays. I don't know if that's really what's going on in this case. I just want to call that out. We do see that occasionally things can happen around holidays like this. And I do just want to touch on the fact that looking into Dawnita's story, I have found some, I don't want to call them criminal records. I have seen where there has been some instances that could be domestic violence related that have happened not only to her, but that she might have engaged in as well. There's one case in particular I saw where it looked like there was a fight that had broken out between her and possibly a man that she was with at that time, and they were both kind of claiming that the other person had attacked them. So I don't know if any of those conditions are coming into play here in particular. There's one kind of important aspect about one of those conditions we're going to touch on later, but I just want to be clear that for her family to be worried, first of all, we've got these medical concerns. I completely understand that. Second, if there is a history of domestic violence of any kind going on around her, certainly cause for concern with that. We don't know the story about why she's staying at her brother's house. Is that possibly related to some argument or falling out or something of that nature? There's a lot that could be at play here. We don't have solid information about it, but the fact that she's last seen on a holiday is just it's stopping me in my tracks a little bit. Quote, I started a chart of when is the last time you talked with her, I talked to her, her kids talked to her, so we could tell when the last time someone spoke to her, said Aunt Nora Martin. And Nora, if you happen to see this or anyone else in the family, in the links in the description box below, I always have a link to a page that I've put together at a website called brainscratchers.com, and it is missing person tips. What you're talking about is essentially one of the things that's on that list, but there is a lot more. There's a lot of investigative steps that the family can take with something like this as well. So if any of you are seeing this, please check the description box, go to that link. There's a bunch of great information. We literally just did a major update to it and all kinds of next steps that you can take there. Back to the details. Then their search started. The family says Wilkerson was last seen leaving the house she was staying in near the 1400 block of Taylor Avenue. And I did pull a map on this just because I kind of wanted to get an idea of what area we're talking about. And it's primarily just looks like a neighborhood area. The first thing that comes to mind is Mode of transportation. How is she moving around? Did someone come and pick her up? Are we talking a ride share? What's going on around this? Like I said, we don't have solid details. It does look like within a couple blocks you can get to some shopping center and some services around things, but I don't know. And then when we work in the information about her potentially being in Carbondale, things get even more interesting. Carbondale, if they're speaking about in Indiana, is over a 3-hour drive from where she was last seen. So obviously we're talking about her getting into a vehicle or getting into some mode of transportation. Now, if they're talking about Carbondale, Illinois, that's actually closer, but still over a 2-hour drive, still in that same consideration of having to have a ride or get some mode of transportation. Wilkerson's family piled into one home to hear an update from the police. Detective Dexter Wolf explains what's going on to the family. This is an active investigation. He basically asked that there was a news station that was covering this that actually sat in the room with that information that came out, and he was asking them not to share any of the details that they were giving out there. Wolf explains they've listed Wilkerson on the National Missing Person Database. I think he's talking about NamUs. Despite the fact that we don't get any direct comments from the detective, and he seems to be trying to keep everything close to the vest when he's having the meeting with the family, there are a few things that I'm seeing trickle out through the media that may give us some ideas about what could be going on here. We're going to touch on those as we continue, but let's continue at courierpress.com. This is an article from July 20th, 2020. Dawnita Wilkerson is a talker. The 44-year-old mother of 6 has daily phone calls with friends and family. It's one of her favorite ways to pass the time. Dawnita was reported missing in the mid-afternoon on June 22nd. Her 15-year-old daughter was the last to see her the day before. And this is a picture of course, her daughter Kiana, you probably recognize from the intro segment, but also her aunt Nora Martin is here on the left. Aunt Nora Martin said, "At times you're hopeful, at times you're mad. We've spent a lot more time together because we go out daily, hanging flyers, just trying to get the word out there. Not knowing makes it hard." This is an active criminal case, Nora said. That is something I don't typically hear on missing persons investigations. Admittedly, this is coming from a family member. I don't know if that's a direct quote from the detective that she heard from him, but that is a pretty strong statement, and it's leading me to kind of two trains of thought. But before we get to that, let's hear the rest of her statement. They do have suspects. Once again, something I don't really hear in missing persons cases. There's a chance that she crossed state lines and they're obtaining or have obtained warrants for social media accounts, phone records, and things like that. So I believe the Carbondale they're talking about could actually be Carbondale, Illinois, and not Carbondale, Indiana. All right, so top concern for me here, if you're talking about an active criminal case and you're talking about suspects, I'm concerned that there is, in terms of that domestic violence conversation we were having before, some person that might have been a threat to her or that wasn't good for her in particular that she was interacting with. Did they come and pick her up? Did they want to talk to her? Was she going to meet with them somewhere? Something along those lines. That is concern number one. The other possible aspect that I see going on with this case is I did find a record showing that Dawnita failed to show for something in court. And I don't know what type of charge that was related to, but her failure to show resulted in a warrant. That warrant, I believe, went active right around the time that the pandemic was really hitting. It was around late March. So I'm wondering if she knew about that, or maybe she came to know about that over the next 6 or 8 weeks, and that might have prompted her to leave the state. Would the detective still call it a criminal case at that point? Possibly. I'm not 100% sure, but I would think that if someone fled the state because they're trying to avoid being picked up on a warrant, would an investigator consider that criminal? I would think so. But my gut's kind of leaning more towards the first thing, especially because they're talking about they do have suspects. I suppose they could be saying that there are suspects in terms of people that are helping her flee if she is indeed fleeing. But I don't know that that's as strong for this language that I'm seeing here. Of course, I just got to remind you guys, we have to stay completely open because we're not talking facts here. We're talking a few quotes that are leading to some things that we still can't be very strong or very certain about. In August of 2020, we see that there is an event that's held. It is called Show Up for Dawnita, and it happens at a local park. We can see there's people wearing shirts for her. There are some bounce houses and some attractions for children that are out there as well. Hundreds of people attended an event called Show Up for Dawnita at Garvin Park. Sorry, I think I said Gavin before. To show support, raise awareness, and raise funds for the family's search for Wilkerson, who went missing on June 21st. The event began at 11 a.m. and was scheduled to go until 11 p.m. Food trucks provided services, donating profits to a fund to that effect, as well as proceeds from raffles and donations. It's always amazing to me when community steps up like this, to know that there's literally businesses that are agreeing to go there and to take their profits and to turn them around and help these families, help this family buy more flyers, buy more posters, get up billboards. It always really moves me. And I just want to call out great communities that do things like that. And thank you guys for being a part of this. We're still thinking positive and thinking in the present tense, said Nora Martin, Wilkerson's aunt and one of the organizers of the event. We're going to be relentless and do everything we can to find her. We need money to continue printing flyers and traveling to other towns. We want her face to be everywhere. Wilkerson is a mother of 6, ages 15 to 22. The youngest siblings are twins. The twins, Kaylin and Kendra Whitledge, were the first to notice she was missing. That is also an interesting statement. But the youngest being 15, it's not like we're talking about infants saying, "Hey, where's mommy?" But for the youngest to be the first to notice that she was missing, were they the only ones home at the time that she had left the home and said she would be right back? Just so many questions that I have about this. And unfortunately, this is one of those cases that hasn't really had a strong local investigative reporter dig into it, answer all these. I mean, some of these questions I'm asking, I know are extremely basic. One good local investigative reporter could clean all that up, get out some solid details, and maybe actually help drive some better tips to law enforcement. We don't really have that happening in this case. Once again, the offer is out there to Dawnita's family. Please feel free to contact me. We can get more details out there, get some of these questions answered, and maybe with the better level of detail, we can help you guys in terms of getting the right tips called in. Also, simple things just like, are we talking Carbondale, Illinois, or are we talking Indiana? Are there other states you're going to, other areas you're going to on your search for her? Should we raise awareness in those areas? It helps to know all of that. Some of these videos actually have ads that I'm running in specific areas to try to raise awareness to those cases. So if there are different parts of the country that we need to light up, we need to know. At this next article, we're going to hear from another family member very concerned about Dawnita. Tri-State Homepage published this article also in August of 2020. 55. That's the number of days a mother has been missing. We haven't heard from her, so what we're saying is we miss her as family and friends. We miss her and we want her home, said Julia Womack, Wilkerson's aunt. We're treating this as she's coming home. She's alive, says her other aunt, Nora Martin. Wilkerson's aunt says they've been on a roller coaster of emotions. We went from scared to worried to mad, and many questions remain unanswered. Did she actually do what we said she would never do and run away? Is she in danger? Martin says. So it seems to me like from this one quote, we're getting some possibility that maybe she could have left of her own accord. Her family's at least considering that. And of course they are. You've got a missing loved one. You're going to run the whole range. I've spoken to enough families that have been dealing with this to know they are literally processing every single possibility. The question I have here is that possibility more realistic in this particular case because of a warrant or an angry ex of some kind or some other factors that we're not even considering here? And would putting that information out in the public actually help elicit the right type of tips to be called in, which of course is our main goal in doing all of this and should be theirs as well. another article from Tri-State homepage, this one in September. So we see that we've got the weeks, months ticking by. The Vanderburgh County Board of Commissioners passed a Missing Persons Awareness Proclamation Tuesday, making September 15th, 2020, Find Dawnita Day. Commissioners hope this proclamation will give families of missing persons a chance to be seen and heard. 12 people from the Evansville area are currently missing. Even though this started with our loss and our hearts being broken, we want to take all of this pain and turn it into something positive, said Nora Martin. And we want to help them in terms of turning this into something positive. We want to help them find Dawnita and bring her home. There is a GoFundMe that is running for this. Show Up for Dawnita is the name of it. I'll have a link to it in the description box below. And of course, on behalf of myself and my amazing supporters through PayPal and Patreon, we're making a donation to this just as soon as I'm done recording today. Funds to that GoFundMe are going directly to helping the family. More flyers, more posters, more trips, because apparently there are some areas that they've been targeting and going to also in the search for her. Over at news.yahoo.com, Julia describes her niece as a strong, funny person with a heart of gold. She's been through a lot, but she's a survivor, Julia added. She's not perfect, but she is ours. We just want her home. Through donations from the community, thousands of flyers have been printed and 2 billboards have been purchased and put up at prominent locations in town with Dawnita's photos and information. Julia said that during her recent research on missing people, she's learned a lot about how cases are handled and hopes to use her situation to one day help other families. In 3 Men and a Mystery, the case we're covering there originally starts as a missing persons case. In one of the later episodes, I'm actually just editing it this week, and that's why it's coming to mind. The mother of Allison Watterson hits this same point, effectively gets to the point where she learned so much about trying to find her daughter. She wants to help other people with that. And in one of those cases, she actually does help a family that's going through that, and they do find the person that's missing. So these things do happen, and it's another amazing aspect about people that are dealing with something so tough, and you figure, like, how can they get from day to day? And then they do amazing things like this where they decide, you know what, we're going to keep working our case, but now I've got all this new information and knowledge, and we're going to try to help other people with it too. That's what we see happening in this case. And that's why we all need to rally around families like this and really try to help them as much as we can. Quote, "People don't always pay attention until it happens to you or someone you love," Julia said. "If it were your mother or your sister or niece, wouldn't you want to help too? We want to be able to give families a voice who may not have one." And I can certainly agree with them and understand that. So in the links down below, of course, if you have information about this case, you've got all the contact details you need. You can even send in information anonymously in the description box down below. On top of that, we need to raise exposure to this case. That's why the Aware Foundation asked for my help. Please help us in doing that. Share this video. I don't know where to target this video. They're talking about that she could have traveled out of state. Obviously, if you've got friends in Indiana, please share this video with them. But quite honestly, I mean, we're talking with this amount of time that's passed, she could be anywhere. So if you're moved to do so, please share this video with your family, with your friends, on your social channels. Let's raise exposure for Dawnita, for Dawnita's family, so they can find the answers that they are desperately seeking. In the links down below, you'll also find a link to her Facebook page, which has basically turned into a big call for help. Family member after family member, poster after poster, everyone doing what they can, trying to raise exposure and trying to find Dawnita. There is also a Web Sleuths thread. It's not a giant thread, but there's a conversation going on there if you want to add to it or keep an eye on it, because there's a lot of times where I'm looking through these threads. Sometimes you find information here you just don't find anywhere else. So another good spot to keep track of if you're going to keep tabs on this case is here at the Web Sleuths thread. So brain scratchers, there's really not enough in terms of the details of this case for me to really have a firm handle on what I think is going on. It's kind of down to the basics. Did something bad happen? Did something do something to Dawnita? Or did Dawnita leave the situation of her own accord for some reason? And we've kind of got indicators on both sides of that argument. I can't really pick one over the other. And quite honestly, with the level of detail we have here, I don't think it even is too helpful to do that. It seems like the investigators are aware of some particular angle that they're working very hard, and they're limiting the information around, which is an approach that some of them take. I don't see cases that get solved super quickly, typically with that approach. I understand why some cases have to be done that way, particularly if it is one of the worst case situations, and if there is potential trials and court and things like that that are going to happen on the tail end of this. I totally understand why some cases need to be treated that way. I can see the family working really hard trying to raise exposure to this case, but I also see that there's no one really kind of asking the right questions and trying to help drive out the right information to be able to really help them with that. So it's ultimately, I get to the end of this video and I'm frustrated because I want to help them. I've done the best I can with the information that's available. And at this point, particularly if there are going to be tips that are really going to help this case, I think some more details have to come out. In particular, other locations to be looking for her. Possibility around what scenarios we're talking about. If it is something related to an ex-lover or something along those lines, just so that the line of questioning can be in place. Or people might be hearing parts of a story and not even knowing that it really relates to this case because it's not the type of story they're thinking about in this case. The level of detail that we have right now is just really not strong enough. A solid clothing description on what she was wearing when she left. We don't even really have a great time frame. We've got no information on what's going on leading up to the disappearance. Just the basics of publicizing a missing persons case are it's weird. There are some things in play and there's a lot that isn't. And could it be helpful in this case? It's one of those things. My gut is kind of telling me, yes, it could be helpful, but with a big caveat of we don't know law enforcement's approach. If they're really talking about criminal charges, that just really changes the landscape. And that's why I wanted to really call out that the things that we're hearing coming through the family, which I think are coming from law enforcement, I don't really hear too often in missing persons investigations, practically never. So it's got me worried that there's something else that's going on with this case that is really not good. In any case, this family deserves help. They deserve answers. Can you be one of those people that helps them? That's what I'm asking. That is it for today's episode. I do want to thank some people that help make donations like we are making today possible. And we're going to thank some new patrons. Thank you, Heather Chandler. Thank you, Jamie Lachlan Bearden. Thank you, Barry Benton. And thank you, Brian High. If you'd like to support the channel, please visit lordandarts.com where you can sign up for Patreon, sign up for PayPal, or buy merchandise. All of it helps keep me here doing what we've been doing for years, trying to help families in these very, very tough situations. Take care, everyone. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you back here on Friday with a brand new episode of Brainscratch on the Lord and Arts channel.